Do you want to bring balance to all the wireless radiation fields in your life, including 5G? The Omnia Radiation Balancer is a small sticker you can stick on any device. It changes the state of the field and creates a new resonance between the wireless radiation and your energy field. On the link below, you'll see all our testing results that show how the body responds excellently once you've made this change in your life. And here's a special offer for the Journey to Truth crowd. Just enter the word truth in caps at the checkout for your 10% discount. It's easy to bring balance back to your body with the Omnia Radiation Balancer.
All right, guys, welcome back. As you can tell, it's almost Halloween, and we decided what better topic to cover than the witch and the history of the witch. Actually, Alexia and I were talking after the last episode, and we did with her, and she brought it up, and we just thought it'd be really fitting to do it right now. And this is her husband, Rick G, by the way, and he has done some research of his own as well. And they've prepared a slideshow for us, so we're gonna go through all that. But it's perfect because Halloween is known. The witch on Halloween is known as Queen of the Night. So it's really interesting. The history is absolutely fascinating. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of stuff. Just talking with Alexia, like I thought I knew a lot about the European witch trials, and she kind of schooled me and proved me wrong in some areas because there's a mainstream narrative that gets pushed, and it's nobody's fault that they fall for it. That's just the information that gets pushed, and there is truth to some of it. It's not all just bogus. You just have to know. You just have to be able to siphon through it, filter through it. Before we get started, though, real quick, guys, just a reminder about our promo codes. If you're looking for a good CBD to try, Hopewell Farm CBD, promo code Journey to Truth 10 gets you 10% off of that. I highly recommend this stuff. They have a crypto payment option. They have veteran discounts, free shipping, any purchase over $200 or more. That's really great stuff. I highly recommend it. All of our Teespring merch is 15% off with promo code CGI Joe. Which, Aaron, we need to change that to Let's Go Brandon or something like that.
Yeah, we got to change it now.
Yeah, we need to change that. I forgot. But you get 15% off of that. And then obviously the Omnia Radiation Balancer, which you guys just watched the commercial for, 10% off that with promo code TRUTH in all caps. And one final plug, our Secret Space Conference next May 2nd through the 5th in Grafton, Illinois. Tickets are available for that. The link is below, secretspaceinfo.com. If you feel like come and grab a ticket, come hang out with us. It's going to be a good time. And what else? Oh yeah, guys. If you're familiar with Rikileaks on Telegram, this is their, I guess, do you guys work on this together? Is that primarily yours, Rick?
I am a founder, but no, Lexi and we have a few mods as well. And I think I see it as a team. We definitely got the ball rolling, but ever since then, earlier this year, I mean, I think we're just coming up on 2,100 subscribers. So it's been amazing. I really just say that Telegram has helped us all get organized. And I think that's been the biggest benefit.
Yeah. And it makes so much more sense knowing that you have a team, because I was like, how does this guy find the time to post 300 things a day? I'm like, but so it's a group of people working together. That's really cool.
Correct. Yes. No, it's great. And we're going to continue to grow. So keep your eyes on us.
Yeah, and we'll put those links in the description below also for anyone who wants to check it out. And by the way, if you don't already, follow Journey to Truth on Telegram, Instagram, Facebook, if you don't already. So where do you want to start, Alexia? Or you?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually take over the screen, and we're going to start a presentation.
Well, did you want to do any, did you want to preface it with any information first? Did you?
Yes. Okay. So basically I wanted to kind of pick up where we just left off, which is mainly around the medieval times. Our last video was talking about the changes in the royalty going on with Vlad the Impaler's bloodline, basically coming into the Queen Mary, Queen of Scots, these two people that are a part of a royal bloodline, and basically these two women fighting for the crown. And it all circles around having the church, like basically, is the royal crown going to be Catholic or is it going to be Anglo-Saxon? And I didn't understand that whenever I heard about medieval times. And to me, I was just like, well, they're both Christian. Like, why are two Christians fighting? And why does it have to change a Bible? And why do the Dark Ages happen after? And it's a lot of confusion. And when we talk about witchcraft, my husband and I are very familiar in seeing witchcraft in our day-to-day society, like modern witchcraft, that we don't even realize is witchcraft. Like, words have power. This is why we affirm things and have affirmations. And this is why things like The Secret and the knowledge of repetition is so big in even our normal day-to-day societies, because we know that our words have powers. We know that there is a power to praying. And remember, we are in a world that doesn't have a confirmed origin creation story. Like, we're all basically prayer and witchcraft in a world that doesn't like believe anything in particular. They're both supernatural and they're both considered magic. And so many wars and so many people have died ever since the beginning of time, basically over this same very similar fight. And it's basically the use of magic and where you draw your magic from being a very big, important part of every holy war. And there's no way to explain modern day witches or witchcraft in modern day society without kind of going back to the medieval era. So
Right.
I wanted to see if you guys could actually like fill me into what you guys know about the European witch trials as of now.
Well, I do want to go back to, you said our words have power, and obviously you think about spelling, like spelling is casting spells. Like, there's a reason everything is well thought out. It's just nothing's happenstance with our history, right? And there's more examples. I just can't think of them right now. But I do want to start by saying, yes, there are good witches and bad witches, and that is just that's basically. If you break it down like this, a witch is just somebody who's tapping in to their potential of what the human is capable of, and it's not actually magic. It just seems like magic. So therefore, based on your personality, you can use it for good or bad, and that's where you get the good witch and the bad witch. It's just how you use that power.
Yes.
It's like a tool that can be used for good or bad. Yeah. It's not the thing in and of itself is not good or bad. It's the intent and the use behind it. Yeah.
Right. And then we have the term witch, which means to arc or bend or shape, which Alexia brought up a good point about. The word arc actually refers to archon. And I guess, are you going to talk about that in your presentation?
I will. I will be going over all that fun stuff too.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, if you want to go back like to the European trials, my understanding of it was that it was basically like a woman's Holocaust. Upwards of 10 million people were murdered. Most from the research, the numbers I have seen, I've heard people claim even more. And that was over centuries. This was like between the 15th and the 17th century. A lot of these women were wrongfully accused. Some of them, back then the life expectancy was age 40. So if you were just to live past age 40, you were suspect, because these women were healers. They were using natural herbs and whatever, holistic remedies, natural remedies to heal themselves. They were the wise woman. And when they were living past the expected age, they were suspect to be a witch. And all it took was your neighbor back then accusing you, an acquisition from your neighbor, and they had every right to come and confiscate your home, seize your property, take everything. It was crazy times, right?
Is it crazy times, or is it happening again? Because what are we seeing in Australia?
Well, yeah, and that's what you're right. They would persecute these people they would have false accusations, and then even in those those false testimonies under torture, they would reveal names of their neighbors, and they would give 14, 15 names, and you have that cascading into effect. And Lexi's right. Aren't we kind of seeing that same thing kind of play out this today?
Well, I mean, I guess the unvaccinated are kind of like the new witches, right?
We have supernatural healing powers,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's basically a war on nature, a war on God, essentially.
Right.
It's like they're just tapping into, like you said, their natural abilities, and it gets demonized by it's all the cabal's control system, that they know what it really is, but they have to stamp it out. So it's the same with the unvaccinated and the stuff going on right now. It's like they know they're behind the agendas, and they're trying to stamp out the opposition and demonize it. So
exactly
right.
Exact playbook.
So we have the Church of Rome back then coming in and deeming every witch the enemy of God, right? That's what the story is. They're saying that all these women are the enemy of God. All they were trying to do was basically reach an altered state of consciousness without using drugs. They had natural ways of doing it. That's where the concept of the witch hat comes from. Apparently, they were wearing like a tetrahedron on their head. It was somehow activating their third eye, and they were able to communicate. Apparently, that's just one of the theories on where the concept of the witch hat came from. And I mean, it goes on, but it was these women became a threat to the Catholic Church and a threat to men, actually, in general. Yeah. Just a threat to men, and they didn't like that. And they were threatened, and they were throwing their power around. And the witch hunt actually created job opportunities. And so that you had these people that now had a job to go around and hunt down the witch, seize her property, and everything was charged. There was a fee for the women. Everything they did, there was a fee. They were charged for everything. This is how they made their money. And if they couldn't pay it, they would take their property. And then they would torture them and get all the information out of them they could, and then hang them publicly, execute them. It goes on and on and on. But I mean, how much more do you want me to get into that?
No, you perfectly summed up exactly all I knew of the European witch trials at the time. And witchcraft it's beautifully laid out in our history that you go to talk about it, and you have half the people in the room going, we're not even going to listen to witchcraft. That's blasphemy. And then you have the other half of the room going, witches aren't bad. Like, as we're healing people with herbs, as we're maybe placing salt around the house for protection, or praying and things coming to us and manifesting things and giving birth and bringing life into this world, we're like, I don't think witches are bad, because we understand that I think every human kind of holds a power that is so much stronger than we're taught to know what our power is even possible of. But we know it's important because, as we're seeing in today's real world, humans are being enslaved, and it's a repetition throughout history that humans are being enslaved. So something we have is precious. Something we have is something another race can't do. So when it comes to the magic treatment, I'm like, okay, maybe it's the humans that hold this magic, and it's being siphoned and wrongly used against us. So that's where I kind of start. Can you get
Yeah.
We're going to share our screen, and we're going to start the presentation.
Right. And just real quick, so what's interesting is because in that documentary, there's a documentary out there called The Burning Times on Amazon Prime. It's good. Some of it's misinformation, but there is some good information in that. Yes. But they say that women back then used to be the physicians and the doctors, and they were the ones doing all the work that now the men took over. And if you listen to channelers and future predictions, they all speak of this council of elders, the council of women elders. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of going back to the roots. If you think about it, why would they be tapping into that information? It's just something we had forgotten.
It is. So thank you for bringing that up. This is my problem with the term witches, and we're going to go into the changing of words, and our language is a huge part of modern day witchcraft. But basically, the word witch was made by the Anglo-Saxons in like 400 to 500 AD. Yeah, AD. So basically what you're seeing there is these white women coming in, calling every woman of power who maybe had a vision and was a visionary, maybe a woman of healing and whatever they were doing all around the world. Now they're called witches. So even if you're in Brazil and you are a medicine doctor and you're now a witch because some lady who just kicked another rightful heir out of her place and crown, she's telling you a witch. So we're going with her name. So I don't even like calling these women witches because for history so much longer and before witches were called witches, they were called goddesses. And
yes,
there's all these other names. There's genies, there's fairies and fae and oracles.
What's the djinn? Is the djinn one too?
Jinns
and
are,
the djinn.
They were spirits, I think.
They're
I think,
entities. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah.
Okay. That's
We're going to get into those kind of things, and they do work with witches, and it's very important to understand the entities that helped witches.
Oh, and something that just popped into my head, and then I'll leave you alone to do your slideshow. But the Catholic Church, right? So these women had a direct pipeline to spirit. They achieved something that we're all trying to achieve right now. This is why we meditate. This is why we do what we do. And then what does the church do? They come in and they put a middleman. They create a barrier. They put a middleman in there. So you have to go through them to get this spirit. It's really interesting if you think about that.
So that's where we're going to pick up, because I wanted to start off the talk going into what we know of the Middle Ages. And we keep saying the church, but you don't realize that the church itself during the Middle Ages was fighting itself. And there was an infiltration within the church itself. So when we say the Catholic Church, yes, it ended up being infiltrated, but I don't know if the Catholic Church started off with the evil intent. It might have been innocent for X amount of years, and then it obviously gets corrupted. But I have a feeling it wasn't corrupted because they needed to make the Anglo-Saxons, whoever they are in kill brackets, they couldn't change the Catholic religion to not wear the cross because vampires can't wear crosses. So they changed the cross, and they couldn't get the queen to change her Catholicism in any way, shape, or form. So they just got a new religion in, which is why if you look up the Vatican created Islam, you'll notice that literally all of the origin stories for Islam and modern day Muslims came from the Vatican. So when one religion that Rome was making doesn't work to control the people, they just change it and call it something else. And they keep it very similar, maybe like the First Testament, but they'll change a little thing here and there. So why the medieval ages was this in-group fighting? It's really interesting to know, okay, what middlemen are they putting there? And that's kind of what we're going to see the natural progression of with here.
Yeah, it's interesting to bring up that the church might have, been
totally. It was infiltrated,
but it might have been positive in its roots, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We don't know. Yeah.
We don't know. There's speculation right now, but there were good things that did definitely come of it, which is awesome to say for sure. So we were talking about the root of words and basically words being magic. I always think of Hebrew because Hebrew is a language that's mathematical at its base.
Oh, and even vibrationally too. It's like the resonance of the language when spoken properly is what they say is, that's the language that can move stones.
What language? The Hebrew?
Hebrew.
Correct.
Interesting.
And you'll spell out letters of things, and mathematically it makes a formula that we can use in like math. And it'll mean a word and it'll be a math formula. So as far as like spells in language goes, that's really cool. And I just want to point out, literally all women are portals. We can bring life into this world. That is the number one. Portal magic is like always the hardest or the latest magic type that like new students of magic learn is portaling out, basically. So
the womb is a portal.
That's a portal. So women by themselves, by the definition of magic, women are already magic, regardless if you consider yourself, or if Anglo-Saxons in 500 BC considered you a witch.
So they're all witches is what you're telling me.
You got a womb, you're a witch.
Right.
So basically it's interesting to look up where this derived from, magic. And I'm sure we've all heard of magi and things of that nature. And it goes into Zoroastrianism. Can you read that?
Can I read this?
Yeah.
Yes. This looks like a definition.
At least just this.
The art of influencing or predicting events and producing marvels using hidden natural forces, also supernatural art, especially the art of controlling the actions of spiritual or superhuman beings. I mean, think about, that's the first thing I think of when I hear that is Solomon's ring, actually, right there where he was given a ring. It was
We'll
Solomon,
get to it in a
yes.
second.
I'm getting ahead. I haven't seen this presentation, by the way, folks, so I'm sorry for stepping ahead.
It's okay. I just wanted to explain that we have French roots. We have old French, basically sorcery, magic. There's a lot of this word magus, which I've been seeing, which reminds me of another MAGA chant that people have been chanting recently. And I don't know what the roots are for it, but it'll kind of make sense if we go further. So, yeah. And whenever you talk about witches, you're immediately like, are we talking about good magic, force, field, nature, or bad? And it basically, from what I understand, all goes into two things: intent at the time of casting whatever spell or whatever the case is, along with who you're pulling your energy from or power from, or where the spell originated from. Depends on how the magic will actually work out.
Well, you have this witch is Slytherin. Is that just as a joke, right?
It's a joke. But she's a bad witch.
But Slytherin, you think about it, in our alphabet, our language, the way we hiss every time we say S.
Yes.
I've heard people claim that's like by design.
Parcel tongue.
Right.
But that's
wow, that's awesome.
That's really cool.
Think about it every time you're hissing every time.
Yes. And we curse. A lot of people in the awakening are torn about the cursing element, and it's so hard. We're raised with it. It's just something that's in us. And I definitely have dealt with this as a problem. But I mean, really, we are cursing. So even if it's so embedded in our nature and we were just blind to the magic that's all around us. So if you are going to curse, I just always say, like, jokingly, take it back, like right after the conversation, stuff of that nature. Just be aware of your words and the gossiping of things.
You're talking about just regular, like,
curse words,
like, next fucking slide, please. Like,
yes.
I take it back.
Let's go. No, that's a perfect transition because like I was talking earlier, women who had abilities, and they're all the same abilities that you talk about or that you see like our friends on Facebook talking about. There's literally saying like, hey, I had a dream last night. Hey, I went to the forest and got some wormwood and now this kid doesn't have shingles anymore. Hey, I played a flute and I moved something and it helped something. So like literally the form of the magic, what was happening when they were casting whatever they were putting intent into, they were just called different things. So we had goddesses, we had oracles, what was that? I Dream of Jeannie. We were watching I Dream of Jeannie in the beginning of the pandemic, and like Disclosure Central. It is all about an Air Force. What was it? An Air Force pilot finds a genie from Carthage.
I was trying to think of what you were going to call her.
Genie.
We should have looked at that.
So basically, we have these women throughout our history that decide fate. They know fate. They can manipulate fate. And This has gone into what we call into modern day witchcraft. And like, that's another thing. Is it good? Is it bad? It doesn't matter if we believe in magic, but other people do. And like, it's a known thing that like everyone laughs at Trump for tweeting at 3 a.m. And then those tweets actually are coming true or did come to pass.
The witching hour, isn't it? Isn't 3 a.m. the witching hour?
Yep. Yes, it is.
So
and he won.
Go back to that other slide, please. That like I sit like that without even realizing it sometimes, like some of these things, like I don't know if they're intentional or not, or in his case, in a position of power, he probably has to be very aware of what he's doing with his hands. But what does that actually mean?
So we have hand gestures. What I've looked it up and I've seen two different things. One, when you place your hands like that, you're creating a shield. So if something comes towards you, it'll break off and it'll literally go around you. And us doing these things on purpose, like that's where, and I'm going to get into it and touch a little bit on blood types and the power of our ancestral knowledge that we have all within us. And when things come naturally to any one of us, that's when people think either our ancestors did or what is it called? Like past lives habit is just natural to us.
So there's also out there there's PowerPoints on our palms, right? Are those submedians for?
Yes, and we have meridians on
meridians. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Right. You're right. I mean, that's what people do, the palm readings, and that's how they somehow tap into some information there. So you're saying he tweeted at 3 a.m. and because like what's the significance of that in this case?
So there's a couple different things. One, first and foremost, he won the election in 2016 at 3 a.m. And whenever he talks about it, I just watched his last little rally and he's like, and we got her at 3 a.m. And there's something about manifestation happening at 3 a.m. If you wish upon something, if you have people, especially a lot of people honing in on one idea, then a manifestation that you're intending to happen will happen. So, and he also had a weird thing, and I didn't even know this until this tweet, this search. There's a bunch of times that he tweeted at 3 a.m., not just like one time, like these are, if you go to this article, like there's a bunch of tweets. So he set intention at 3 a.m. He won an election at 3 a.m. He like all this weird stuff.
So does that show that he's aware of those things?
I think it's important to know that the Scottish, they consider witches, they're like, witches aren't necessarily bad. It's if you sell your soul to the devil. Then you're no longer a witch at that point, girl or boy, you're a warlock. And girl or boy in like the 400s, Scottish didn't believe, like they were okay with having witches being girls or boys, but as long as you sold your soul to the devil, that made you a warlock and like bad. So he is of the Scottish, his ancestors are Scottish.
Yeah, Scottish descent. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So just interesting to know. I don't know if it's just ironic. If you look at pictures of him, he's always doing it. It's not just like one or two times. Whenever he's around, especially in the later years, when I think attacks were coming at him, his little hands are always like, oh, it's just interesting to know. One of those things like when is a coincidence too much,
And Tyler's right. I mean, that's a very common type of hand gesture. And you're right. He's very aware of what he is doing with his hands. And a lot of those instances, if you've been there, if you've been a public speaker, if you've, even just given someone a directive, you're going to get a lot more out of, doing something like an open hand gesture versus, pointing or, yelling or, doing something obscene. So the fact that he does that, he's very conscious about that. It is interesting.
Well, subconsciously, we might even do that naturally, subconsciously, knowing the effects somehow. With a lot of things we do, like whenever we like do this, like people don't realize they're cleansing their aura whenever they do that. Whenever you wipe your head like that, in traffic or something.
Isn't that so cool? Like we're using our body we're using our bodies, like turn on the windshield wipers. We don't know why we're doing it, but we're doing it for that reason. Right. People don't even know the reason necessarily for yawning. Like there isn't an official reason, apparently, they say. So with that being said, like, why do we do these things? Why do we have these organs that aren't being used? Like, what is our body capable of? Like, It's just very interesting. So I do want to go back, and this is going into the Solomon realm. Okay, the modern day witches, like I never want to go to straight to devil worship or the opposite, which is like God stories, basically taking over our whole history. And you want to see what they're both saying. And it's very interesting because the witches of modern day, they are the ones that made me look up these seven sisters, because what Rick's going to go into is modern day Ivy Leagues being called Seven Sisters universities. And there's a lot of women who came from these universities that make money moves in our society and become lawyers and become activists and have literally changed the course of history and narratives. And we need to know what are the Seven Sisters? Why is there an Ivy League school here in America, in the elite societies? And why are these people like Hillary Clinton and Vanderbilt from these places? So we go into what the Seven Sisters are, and you have this idea of the seven sisters that Solomon saw. And these women were basically one of each: deception, strife, battle, jealousy, error, and then power. And then there was the last sister her fate was worse than all of these combined, but she doesn't say her name.
And that's what they represented, right? They represented deception, strife, jealousy, and error. So they're kind of like the seven deadly sins.
They were, he definitely said he saw women, and he was allowed to talk to them. And they explained to Solomon, and remember, Solomon is the son of King David. And King David was an awesome ruler. He brought down Goliath he's a little guy, just using a slingshot. And then he had a son, and stuff went wrong. There's a whole song about it. The Hallelujah song is about basically a wonderful human king falling for lust of a woman he saw naked on a rooftop. So his son met with these women that in a base of a mountain, and they explained to him, like, yeah, basically we're the worst things that a human will have to go through. But there is each one of us has an angel that can basically destroy us. So that's kind of the check and balance system that they explained to him. Like, yeah, we're horrible, but there is another half, a polarity. We each have someone who can like take us out, basically, is what they said.
Right. I mean, there's almost like an antidote.
Exactly. So the Testament of Solomon.
The Testament of Solomon is a pseudo-depigraphical composite text ascribed to King Solomon, but not regarded as canonical scripture by Jews or the Christian groups. It was written in the Greek language based on precedents dating back to the early first millennium CE, but was likely not completed in any meaningful textual sense until someone in the medieval period. Its most noteworthy recessions in the text describe how Solomon was enabled to build his temple by commanding demons by means of a magical ring that was entrusted to him by the archangel Michael.
Commanding demons.
Right.
By means of a magical ring. Right.
And that ring had a pentagon on it. I think that's
pentagram. Yes.
Pentagram.
I think they call it the Star of God. I think it's been referred to as time has gone on, but I mean, that was literally a ring given to him. It's almost like a Lord of the Rings in a way, where you were able to control the spirit of demons to do your will, good or bad.
Yeah.
And what they considered.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, this stuff is like, we have to really think, like you said, modern day witches. This stuff is happening not just with like women. This stuff is happening in politics and among the elites, which we know that underground. And this stuff is very well practiced, and it's believed in. They live by this stuff. But meanwhile, they try and write it off as crazy on the surface. So we never really discover their ways.
Right, exactly. But yet we're allowed to watch television with programming and be programmed. It's okay if we don't call them out on it, but they're allowed to keep doing it to us over and over again. And if we pray in public, we get laughed at. Or if prayer is taught in school, even though spelling is taught in school, which we just learned that spells have power, prayer isn't even allowed in school. Not forcing anyone on prayer, but that's also a lot of this is what happened in Harry Potter. Like, jokes aside, the last years or so of Harry Potter, the last like 3 books, was the Ministry of Magic coming into the school and taking away Defense of the Dark Arts. And everyone was like, excuse me? And they're like, you don't need it. There's no dark arts. Like, what do you think's going to get you? And they made fun of them for not being able to battle off demons, literally demons. Like, it is so interesting that reading the Harry Potter series, the last year, no one could say the V word because you would be tracked, Voldemort. So they called him like he who must not be named, because you wouldn't be tracked and targeted. So here we are. We can't say V words, where otherwise you would be tracked and targeted.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff with the Harry Potter series that seems to be very...
Well, I mean, there's David Shurjan, who has his Above Duality channel. He is always talking about how Harry Potter is a documentary. I mean, he always brings it up, and he is like, it comes up. There's common themes everywhere that relate to the real world, but when it's presented in a theatrical way, like in a movie theater, people don't make the connection.
And we know so many like people with great powers on Facebook, and I have been able to talk to them with how they use their powers. And every single one of them describes the Patronus charm on Harry Potter, which the Patronus charm is if there's a life-sucking demon thing, like sucking the life out of you, you get into a place of bliss. Like, think of the happiest you've ever been. Do a prayer. Think of the time your child was born or you met your husband or whatever, and then use that energy of pure joy, and it repels the demon. But that's basically what you do in Reiki. That's basically what energy healers do. And I do a detoxing series on Rikileaks, and you have to get into a state of bliss before you do some of these energy exchanges to get rid of demons.
Yeah, you have to be in a place of gratitude. That's, again, going into those of you who know about some forms of metaphysics, is your vibration. It must be a high vibrational state in order to access these realms, in order to literally biohack our bodies. We have to be at a vibrational state that is in the positive spectrum.
Yeah, 100%. And you'll find that you have more experiences if you are an experiencer. When you're at a higher vibration, a higher frequency, I truly believe that you might be able to see even a UFO and the next person might not, or some spirit in the room, or whatever the case may be, depending on what frequency you're at. If you're a little bit higher than the person next to you, that's why we know all these people in our lives who are seeing things all the time. Maybe they're just tuned into a different frequency.
There's tons. I've heard tons of stories of ET contacts or UFO sightings where like one person can see it and experience it, and no one else saw it, or the people standing right there didn't even see it. So right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Like they're like on a different frequency, or however they're doing it.
Yeah, there's a lot of instances. You're right, where people are like, "Oh, did you see that? Did you see what I see?" And the other person's like, "No, Bob,
sometimes they do.
You're crazy."
No.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And that's probably the low vibrational person who's always thinking, "Oh, you're the crazy person. I can't be seen in public looking at what you're looking at because I'm going to be branded a witch." And that's, in layman's terms, that's exactly what we're talking about. Is this remnant from our society about being labeled as a practitioner of witchcraft, or being in any way different. People are afraid to speak up because you're going to get prosecuted by the Inquisition. You're going to get hurt, and it's not going to go well for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Really quick, something I actually just stumbled across again right before our show, and I don't think it was a coincidence. I was looking for an email and I found an old email. So at one point in the recent past, I had reason to believe that some spells were being cast on me. So wow. I started doing some research. Into how black magic works and all this stuff. And I came across this old satanic cult handbook from 1990. Well, it was printed in 93, but it's older than that. And it goes into detail how to cast spells and how to do all this stuff towards people, how to recruit people, how to deceive them, what to look for, what personality traits to look for. And it gives recipes on how to do things if you want somebody to have insomnia, or if you want them to blah, 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 blah. It's like a spell book, basically. It goes on and on. I mean, it's unbelievable. It actually, like, it hurts my stomach to read it, because like literally like it makes me sick to my stomach because it's just disgusting information. But it's very informative. It's, they want you to look for a dysfunctional person. Then there's the indoctrination, the recruitment, the types of abuse and torture, but it doesn't explain them. It explains how to do them covertly, so people don't know that you're doing it. This is, anybody who does this could be labeled a witch, but like I said, it's the opposite can be done. You could use this power for good too. Anyway, I won't stay on it too long, but it's really.
I do want to mention that, because the fact, what you're explaining is we're so numb to the witchcraft around us. And it wasn't until recently that I realized what was going on here. And we're going to go into witchcraft, into the CIA and Hollywood. But basically, exactly what you were saying, when I was a teenager, the cool thing was America's Next Top Model. You would watch America's Next Top Model, and it was these models who were in the agencies for years, and they were bringing on new talent. So these new talents, hundreds of girls every season. And I think they had like 2 seasons a year. It was all the time going. So they had constant fresh meat of the most beautiful women, tall, the best actresses. It was a audition basically of finding women who are spectacular, and they would immediately get taken into these agencies. And when I think of agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and like the Marvel universe. And I think of honeypots and these women who have these magical powers, who might want to be seated in elite circles like Hollywood, but they want to be able to have and possess powers. And one of those ways I know that America's Next Top Model was teaching this and kind of fishing for the newest catfish, funny, was basically they would always do a little, what is it called? Challenge. They would always do a challenge. And one of the challenge was all the models you have 5 minutes and no mirror to get ready. So like this happens all the time. If you're on the runway, you have to change looks really quickly. You have 5 minutes, do your makeup and get like ready, have a go-to look. So they were explaining like, you just have to work on your eyebrows, your eyes, and your lips, because that will give emotion. So it's a way to trick, especially from afar, people into thinking that you look put together, because they can see your eyes and mouth movement and really quickly doing your hair. So they explained after the challenge was done how women can change their look really quickly. But like, if you watch that episode now, it's kind of scary, because you could do so much with that one skill of getting ready quickly. You can commit a crime and you can immediately change your look like a Catwoman and leave the scene. You can steal a child, change the outfit really quick, do these couple things, and no one would notice what the child looks like. So all these little things that they were doing in just the daily episodes was like literally magic. They were teaching you, and they were doing a show like Who Does It Better, basically.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even the murder shows, like they teach you how to get away with murder. They literally like give you the playbook. I mean, if somebody wanted to go out there and do it, they know what to do. They're giving you the recipe.
That all goes along with, what do we always say? They're always showing us and telling us what they're doing. And it's almost like that's a part of their magic and their belief system. Like they always have to tell us what they're doing.
They have to
and put it in plain sight. And since none of us or most people aren't aware of any of this stuff, that no one thinks anything of it.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, we're telling you guys. And so it's almost like in their mind, we're consenting to everything because, we're telling you and you're not doing anything about it. So it's like karmic.
Right. We just write it off as like, we see it, but we write it off, and then.
Except for the ones that like us that are awake to this. And then obviously more and more people are waking up all the time. And it's getting harder and harder for them to get away with things without people standing up, which is great because now you see, more and more people are speaking out and standing up against things.
Right.
That's also how magic works. The more people that go into a spell or a prayer and put their intention towards it, the quicker it happens and real results start to happen. So we all need to band together and like get on the same page just with truth. Like, just if we all think of like, let truth be seen, then truth it'll prevail.
Because these evil forces can't really double back on the centuries upon centuries of lies that they've been telling humanity. So they can't really be like, oh, hold on, we can save this. No, they've said it. There's really kind of spiritually no going back from this. So once we all wake up, it's it's going to be pretty great.
Game over.
Yeah, exactly.
Why they're scrambling so heavily right now, because they know they know they're done. Basically, they're just basically stalling right now, trying to hold on as long as possible, because that's all they can do at this point.
One last thing, and then we'll get back to the slideshow. Did you see just today, right before we're recording this, Disclosed TV shared it. It's a video of a velociraptor or a lizard at the UN making a statement about climate at a podium, making a statement about the climate change disaster and the climate crisis. And they literally have a reptilian on stage at a podium telling the world that we're in climate crisis. This is exactly what we're like. They're telling you, they're showing people write it off as a joke. Oh, how cute, how funny, whatever, I mean,
see the new Netflix show called Inside Job. It's like an animated, kind of like Rick and Morty, similar show, but it's literally like it's making fun of all the stuff that's real, basically, and it's putting it right out there.
Wow.
And it's like, they're just laying it all out there, just telling you, and it's all
just like you said, it's another delay tactic. They're like, all right, start producing these shows we've had on backlog. They are really going to be distracting for people. And it's relevant. It's like, why are they still producing this stuff?
Well, it's almost like a double-edged thing, because it's like, it's that, but it's also, they're making fun of it. So the people that are asleep or that think all that stuff's, that's ridiculous. It's like pushing that psychologically on people. So, we want to keep people having the laugh factor with this stuff, so no one will want to look into it or take it seriously. I think it's
exactly, they're teaching them how to laugh at us. So when you explain
it's programming.
It's programming. They're telling them how to react.
Desensitize them to the truth.
Exactly.
This slide is just basically sig dating. The Seven Sisters is also a constellation in our sky. It's the Pleiades, it's Taurus. And the Pleiades is Seven Sisters. So you have this aspect of the Seven Sisters and those who identify from the Pleiades system. They know they're not from Earth. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind, that these witches aren't just from this realm, be it if we're a third rock from the sun or a third dimension. And if a ninth dimensional thing could live on Earth around us that we just can't see, that's important to know, because if you see Pleiades as a dimension, that helps out a lot in a little bit. We're going to go into that. But basically, I wanted to cover that they're sisters, they're siblings, and there's something I kept noticing throughout the entire research dig was that like all of these twins or all of these witches had twins. So the first set of Solomon's witches or women or twins, they all had a equal and opposite counterpart that could like get rid of them. So that's another part I wanted to explain, is that all of these witches and magical people, they had a twin, and it's almost like it has to keep balance in the polarity. This is really interesting. Sabrina in the 90s, the entire first 4 seasons, when you're going through high school with her, she's picking up these little clues. And at the very end, when she's 18 or whatever, about to be of age, she puts together all the clues, and then she has to like rival herself. And there's this like scary Sabrina Spellman living in Netflix land that she has to literally talk to, and they like duel it out. So you fight your counterpart, and whoever wins that duel in the Spellman universe gets to be the witch on that.
Shadow Sabrina.
Yeah. So there might, so it's very interesting that there is a Shadow Sabrina out right now. And they do cover that every Spellman has a twin as well. Oh, that also reminds me of a Man in the Iron Mask, because per Scottish people, women and men can be witches basically. So the Man in the Iron Mask, it's a royal who one of his twins was locked away, and then one of his twins had a big ego and was running the land. So when the people get tired of the big ego running the land, they go get the nice twin and they swap them out. That's another thing.
Wasn't that Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah.
And I believe that men, I mean, it's like you said, like they just label it, they just slap the label witch on it, you know?
Yeah.
But just because you're tapping into something that might seem supernatural, doesn't necessarily mean you're a witch, or it does, depending on the way you want to look at it.
Exactly. Zoroastrianism again. I didn't know I had this slide. I thought I got rid of it.
Well, it was just interesting how there was a lot of crossover from what we were seeing back in the ancient times in Zoroastrianism. Is that kind of what you were linking up with that?
I just wanted to start giving people an understanding of these councils and where the word magic basically came from. And I thought this was interesting. The name Zoroaster being interpreted means a sacrifice to the stars. Just thought that was
wow.
That's satanic. That's really interesting. So Zoroastrian is, go back to that definition real quick for the people who don't know. So it's founded in Persia in the 6th century BCE by the priest Zarathustra, and the blah, 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 blah. So what is, it's just,
it was a
kind of just,
it reformed what they had. Persia had a lot of the same, like, it says right there, polytheism. So they had their different gods, and it looks like this one replaced it. And in that replacement, there was a lot of, I know that Lexi touched on the other slide with the two demon twins who they were part of the creation story, I believe. You want to go back to that real quick? We'll touch on that. Is it relevant to the upcoming slides?
I was just trying to show people
more examples.
I mean, this could be a 3-hour thing if we're going to go into actually what Zoroastrianism.
Right. It's fine.
Basically what was happening was, like you said earlier, there was a lot of middlemen being thrown around. And at the time of, you basically had people who worshipped many gods, and this was all being pushed and made into worshiping like one God. And in that one God, people even still tried to change the words of that God. So prayers might have been redirected. So Zoroastrianism, the Masons took a lot of the ways that they worked and ruled and the rituals that came from there. And I believe it was a melding of several different religions at the time with several different deities. So the magic that came from these people were very ancient magic, very well tried and true magic that had to go into raising civilizations, basically.
And this has influences on the Freemasons, or influences of Freemasonry. Okay.
And I would check into, for women on Freemasonry, there is a special guild. It's the Eastern Stars. Stars are women of Masons, basically. So we also think, that's another thing. We also think Masons are just men, and we forget about all these women Masons. And also not only the women Masons, but if anyone's familiar with the Stepford Wives, it's an old movie that just keeps going throughout our system. They made it in like the 50s and then again recently. And it's explaining that, yes, there's men in a society. They seem to control everything. They have their little secret clubs and everything. But at the very end, you realize that the main man was actually a robot being controlled by his wife. And it was actually the elder wives that the unsuspecting victims, basically, who were actually running the show and created these people to place blame on.
Which again, take that, and you have that same representation of the, let's go back to ancient Egypt. The pharaoh's advisor very well could have been a female priestess or goddess, or someone who could interpret the signs of their gods and give him advice, spiritual advice that he didn't have. Mm-hmm. And she's really kind of, they're behind the scenes kind of pulling the strings, like a lot with what we see right now with the current administration, who's really in control of those people who appear to be empowered by us, but who's really controlling them.
And there's transgenders.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We don't know if they're boys or girls.
Right. That's interesting. Anyway, next slide.
Yeah, from all my research, the real controllers, the real top level of the cabal. It's all behind the scenes. Like, you don't see the real control, and then everyone we see is some form of a puppet, basically.
Exactly.
They're getting their orders from something or someone above them that none of us see. So like especially the president is, like, they're a puppet for sure, except Trump was like an outsider. And that's why, that's a whole nother topic. That's why they attacked him and try to get him out. But he had a team he was working with too, the alliance or whatever you want to call them. But yeah, anyone we see, they're all puppets, people following out their orders from their masters.
Oh, certainly.
And they're they're doing things that everything is an agenda. Like, everything is done for a reason, and there's magic going on. There's rituals constantly going on. The cabal does, and it's all this occult stuff that they believe in, that they know is real, and they try to portray it as, oh, that stuff's fake, and
right
in the mainstream all along. They're literally doing all this stuff in negatively to control us and manipulate us in the world.
They're allowed to do it to us, but we can't do it back.
Yeah, on one hand, they're all getting together, making themselves powerful, and on the other hand, just like you said, they're creating content to make us feel like what they're doing is silly and that it's ineffective. And it's the complete opposite. It is. It's a lot of double think, triple think in most instances too.
Yeah, and they push the science, which is the mainstream science, which is not real science. Basically, it's basically a religion, and very dogmatic and controlled, and much of it is incorrect. And they push that as being the truth on the mainstream level, and then they behind the scenes are doing all this occult. They know all that stuff, it's real, and they practice it. And it's like they have this puppet on one hand, and then the other hand's doing like the real stuff.
Right.
And
exactly.
You're distracted by this, and until you look behind the man behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz, until you look behind the curtain, you're never going to know what's going on. You're never going to see it.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. No, that's exactly right. And what you made me think of too is, what's the movie? Robin Hood, but the funny one, the cartoon Robin Hood.
Oh yeah.
The king lion, he had a snake advisor, and the snake advisor had the crazy eyes. So he would, like, if the snake advisor wanted him to do something, he would like look into his eyes and like make the king do stuff, which is very Manchurian candidate. So that's, Lord of the Rings has a character like that too. On Rikileaks, we have a show called Series of Seven, where we break down these literatures of the past and try and see like how parasites and this number 7 ties to them. And that's one thing we definitely noticed.
So Parsis, what do we have here? What are you showing us now?
These are going to be the Pharisees, or the Pharaoh's magicians, are the people who basically spoke into the ear or were called.
I think that's a different, unless Wikipedia, thanks Wikipedia, unless they change the spelling. Because I think Pharisees is something that's different. I think this is Parsi. I think this is a Parsis, an ethno-religious group of the Indian subcontinent whose religion was Zoroastrianism. So they were talking about a group of people on the Indian continent who were practicing Zoroastrianism.
And they were, okay, so Pharisees, instead of the Persian Empire, is going to be the Egyptian Empire, and Pharisees are going to be the Pharaoh's magician assistants. So interesting that the words were very similar. And we're going to see that coming up soon when you have other witches that just change their words spelling ever so slightly. The reason I bring this up, and again, if we're talking about basically witchcraft being used in a government control type situation, then you have this weird thing that happens called slavery. And no matter what, whenever you have people telling us that they can use their magic, but we can't use our magic, and if our magic is God's magic, like that's when people start getting their freedoms taken away, letting our own natural immune system take care of a parasite, when our rights are being taken away, it's always like basically taken away your magic. And we all are told like it's nothing to take for realistic history. However, when you're talking about magic and stuff, this story in the Exodus is like the number one story we have to pay attention to, because literally it was about people of Egypt worshiping and praying to other gods. And the main problem with that is sacrifice happened. And they would kill things, they would kill animals, they would kill children, and then a manifestation would come from that. So that was the magic of the land. You had to kill something or sacrifice. And even having slaves, you're sacrificing them, even if they're not dying and they're just building stuff or working 9 to 5 and driving 2 hours to work, driving 2 hours home, and then going to bed really quick. That's sacrificing of something. So you're still getting a loosh type factor from these slavery systems, and that's still making magic. So the story of Exodus has to be spoken of, and it goes into the medieval times too, because the magicians for the pharaohs were basically doing God's magic. Whenever this Moses went to the Pharaoh and going, hey, like, really, please stop like enslaving my people, it turned into a fight of, oh, my magic's better than your magic. And like Moses was led by the Hebrew God, and the Hebrew God was like, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. And like Moses was not about it. He's like, yeah, I have God telling me that he's going to take you over if you don't let go of my people. And the Pharaoh, instead of actually thinking like let go of his people, he just was like, okay, I'm going to F around and I'm going to find out what your God has the power to do. And it ended up being plagues upon the nation. And the Pharaoh's magicians couldn't recreate the plagues. They couldn't explain how all of these things were happening after Moses said, hey, this is going to happen. And then they happened. So the Pharaoh was like, how can you guys not, you're my magicians, how can you not do the same magic as this God? He didn't really like
stop it.
They couldn't stop it. It was scaring him. So it turned into a big thing. And basically God can play with magic too. And he can play dirty, even though he'll give you 1,000,000 times chances not to go there and not to get dirty. If his will is imposed and if his people are being held slave, he's going to play the dirty rules of the land. So obviously the ending of this story basically is for the first time, the Hebrew God sacrificing an innocent life, which was a sheep. The sheep's blood was put on the Hebrews' houses. And then that night, all of the firstborn children were taken to heaven. And right then and there, we finally saw that, okay, we can play sacrificial magic too. And now, the head of your households are all gone for the next generation. So we're playing by your rules. And then that turned into the people against God's magic, they're at the bottom of the Red Sea right now. So that's basically where we get. If I would love to talk about all of this without going into the devil God aspect, but this is the oldest game known to man. We're still in it. And basically what started happening at the Middle Ages was this savior who could do all these awesome magic tricks. And he was making people blind see. He was reversing parasitic diseases and people were curing themselves. He used detoxing techniques we use nowadays, and he was getting rid of these demons from his colon. And basically he died. There was a Roman war about it. And after that, there was an enlightenment of people, and people started, it turned something on. This Christ that entered into the civilizations was making people wake up, and Rome couldn't have that. So then we have the Middle Ages, and stuff started happening with the storyline. Okay, so the reason of the commandments, basically after the Exodus happened and we realized people were doing magic, which usually had to do with sacrifice to enslave people, this turned into, okay, if we can mercenary out magicians, then we have to put up rules that everyone has to follow. Just like keep it simple, keep it no one can mess this up. So the, let me see here. So instead of like basically getting away from this false god, like worship and stuff. So during the medieval times, a lot of stuff was happening. Yes, we have this fight within the church, basically saying, we love this Jesus guy. He showed us so much. Look what we can do. But like, he told us not to worship him. And like this other Anglo-Saxon group came going, oh, well, you know, if you don't agree with our way of seeing things, which we believe in a Trinity, then you're going to die. So people who had one story of what just happened in their religious beliefs was being corrupted before their eyes. Some people knew what was happening. And the biggest thing that we can tell happened during this time, yes, the Queen Mary stole the other Queen Mary's baby and made that baby change the Bible. And now we have the King James Bible. And apparently there were a couple books, at least 200 pages removed, confirmed. And 200 pages in the Bible, let's just keep in mind the Noah's Ark story is half a page. So even 200 pages of missing text gone is like stuff. It's big.
Yeah. Well, the Council of Nicaea, which Constantine put together, removed they basically decided what was going to be what was going to be included in the Bible, and they took out, of course, all the empowering stuff, all the stuff that had the occult and the esoteric stuff that would be empowering to the people, because obviously Rome is the bad guys and they have to control the people, and they can't have people being empowered. They won't be able to be controlled. So
is it true? I've also heard that the original version of the Bible, God was plural. It was gods, and it has been changed now to a singular God.
Actually, so multiple different things get translated as God in the Bible, and one of the biggest ones is Elohim, which is plural, like you said. And Elohim actually means like the mighty ones, I believe is the actual correct translation. The mighty ones. So
Elohim Adonai was a group.
What, like Ancient Aliens talks about. They're like, oh, that makes you think of like ETs, like that. But it gets translated as God. So you think it's just, it's God. But when you look at what the word actually was,
right,
it's Elohim, which is a plural word of like the mighty ones that came from the stars or the sky. Or the heavens.
It was the Hebrew gods that they were allowed to worship. And it wasn't what we noticed was going on. And I look at all of our history very much like a programming simulation theory, basically. And when you look at it this way, this allows things to come into a different line of sight. I worked as a travel agent, and we had to use a DOS system. And you use DOS because it's the quickest time, real-time operating system that you can put in data. And when you're working with flights, you have to book those flights quickly because like everyone's viewing the same thing. So your section of seats can be bought. So you want to do it quickly. You have to put commands in. And I know just from working with that easy old school programming that you can change a command and you can make a shortcut command. And where that starts getting dangerous is hackers, good hackers, they'll do this to commands where you think you're putting in something and it's a Trojan horse. You're actually calling upon the hacker's IP address maybe, and now he's getting the credit card information that you're putting in. Stuff of that nature tends to happen, even with real viruses that we have in our system. I know being in the Twitter realm and all of this stuff, you'll have someone follow you and they changed the name ever so slightly. So you like think it's real. And this is very much Trojan horse. And this is how war was taking place and what they started noticing. And the middleman started being hijacked. So even if the middleman or the archangel is like genuinely good and works with God, people were noticing if you called upon them, another entity with a very similar name or very similar sounding name would come in and you would actually be talking to them and it would interfere the actual.
Right. The trickster spirits, the posers. Yeah, exactly. So are you done with this slide?
Okay. So, basically, this is just interesting because whenever you look up pre-medieval, they always call it the old world. There was an old language, there was an old origin story, even though it was still called Christian. There were changing of prayers and names, and things were just really weird. There was a movement of people that wanted to keep basically the forms of Christianity they believed in, and they weren't even allowed that. So that's a religious prosecution, but it was like Christians against Christians, which is very interesting. Oopsie. What is this? Oh, okay. Charlemagne. This is just pictures of medieval times, and people who were fighting for the name of God, basically God's magic over this Roman magic that was infiltrating everything. And
that's what Aaron was talking about.
I know when he said it, I'm like, he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the council of
Yeah, Constantine put it together, and that's what became the Bible. They're like, all right, what books are we gonna make into the Bible? And they decided, and then took out, Book of Enoch, took out Book of Thomas, all the ones that had when you read those books, you're like, oh my God, you're like, no wonder this got taken. It's got it's got all the esoteric, empowering stuff in it, the real stuff, the good stuff. Yeah, exactly. And then even the stuff that made it, even the books that made it into the Bible, much of it got edited and mistranslated and messed with. And even after all that, there's still stuff that slipped through the cracks where you'll read and it's like, it says things like where Jesus talks about the pineal gland, or they talk about reincarnation and all the stuff that Christians aren't supposed to believe in, it's not supposed to, but it's still in there. When you know what to look for.
Exactly. This was just a reminder for me to go into language, because this little video game at the top left is a video game.
Metal Gear Solid.
Boom.
Yeah.
I know. That was my game.
The Phantom Pain.
Yeah.
It's the fifth in the series, and it's very interesting because
parasites.
CIA, Babylon witches, and parasites.
Really?
Basically, this whole story travels around the idea that in Babylon, all the humans were given parasites. And parasites, I think, traveled through bathhouses. The sanitation department, they travel through water. So if you have bathhouses, you can give everyone a certain parasite. And that parasite, we know, if you are into biohacking, can take over your host body, and it can make it do stuff. Basically, schizophrenia is caused by a parasite. Bipolar disorder has parasites around it. And when you notice, like, okay, if you can inject a society with parasites, they're easier to control in whatever way, shape, or form. So this show goes into Babylon giving everyone parasites, but the way the parasite acted is it went to the vocal cord and it controlled the language that was allowed to be taught by the slaves, spoken by the slaves. And this is him, the main guy, smoking wormwood to kill the parasites. And that is also like one of my top antiparasitics that cures my Rona all the time. Whenever me or someone, my family or friends get it, I'm like, just take wormwood. That's what Africa was using. There's studies on it. It works.
Oh, great. You're going to get us taken down for medical misinformation now.
There's a study on it, so I can talk about that one. And the Right to Try Act allows us to talk about medical studies. So good to know.
I don't think YouTube cares about that act.
YouTube's going to say we're spreading dangerous medical.
You can totally go over me and like beep it out. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just giving you. No, I'm totally joking.
I mean, it might happen.
Right.
It might happen.
We have backup channels.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rumble and yeah.
I think actually in the game, side note for anybody who cares, I think it just speeds up perception of time in the game, but they include it in the game. The plot itself, if you guys aren't going to play it, it does involve a lot of parasitology of the plot of the game. That it's more of a work of art, really. I mean, I wasn't really a Metal Gear Solid fan, but what Hideo did when he wrote, I think, this game is he knew a lot about what the subjects that we're talking about, how there are esoteric beginnings in our history that have been hidden from us, and the game touches on that and explores it a lot. So it is very interesting, and of course the whole parasite aspect he uses tied to a lot of real research, and a lot of it, I think, if he would have only hit Alexia, I think there would have been a whole different plot in the game, honestly. But, I was playing it one day and she heard the P word, and it was all down from there, baby.
It's like, what's going on?
And she's not wrong.
No. So basically, the idea of a parasite being used as a weapon, basically. Then you look at the military-industrial complex as something totally different. They're using magic. They're using magic that you're not allowed to use. They're using magic. It's a thing. It's a slave system. So we think of the military, we're like, okay, but like they're using stuff that we don't even know about, and your tax dollars went to fund it. So it's important to understand why witchcraft can be so, and it's not so much saying it's bad, but if witchcraft is being used for bad, which anything, it's a tool can be used for great, a tool can be used for horrible. So, and
wars, just real quick, and like wars, they'll, we know the cabal starts wars, like fake war, like World War I, World War II, all these wars they play both sides against each other, and they happen on specific dates and specific places on the planet that are like occult, dates or places that are like, there's an energy vortex or whatever. Why? That's not a coincidence, So these are rituals. These are basically mass, like satanic rituals that all these wars that they create, which is really
right. The archons are.
But that's the case.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And then the archons are hanging out on the battlefield, just siphoning all that loose.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it buys them time to do all the crap that they want to do behind the scenes. It's, World War II is a good example. Oh, I thought that was really happening.
No, it's not real.
Oh, my heart. It's not real, folks. Sorry.
Not too deep.
This is too scary.
I wanted you to keep talking. I'm just going through my slides. I'm finishing them up.
But like in World War II, when Hitler found the perfect opportunity during some of the fighting and the blitzkrieging to then send an expedition down to Africa and then further into Antarctica and start looking for these relics that he had heard about in the, into the 1930s that he was interested in. So they use these things not to win battles or to gain territory to better their people. They're doing it to buy time for themselves.
Yeah.
To attune to their own agenda. This looks fascinating.
There's the hidden agenda always behind it, and it involves magic, energy, it involves control, manipulation,
right,
and sleight of hand. Like, you think this is going on, and behind the scenes we're doing all this stuff. Yeah, Hitler and the Nazis were super into the occult. Like, they were super. And then it's funny because then when the Nazis rose to power, the occult was such a big part of their whole thing, and then they banned it for the whole country. Like, they outlawed it. So in the background, behind the scenes, they're practicing all this stuff, and that's super important to them. And then they say, no one else, you guys can't do this. This is bad.
Yes.
So it's the whole thing we were just talking about. They do the stuff that they say is fake or bad. And
it's very interesting that you just brought that up, because the elements that Hitler was like trying to get, because he was scavenging for art and like specific art pieces, and Edge of Wonder covered that entire thing. There were like 7 trinkets that he was looking for, like a sword, a goblet, a tiara, a ring, like all these artifacts, but they match up to the Harry Potter artifacts that contain the soul of Voldemort. So Voldemort cannot die as long as these artifacts stay alive and hidden. So it's interesting that the artifacts that Hitler was trying to gather during the World War II match up. Like, there was literally a tiara, which Harry Potter has a tiara. There was a spear, which looks like the Gryffindor sword. There was a piece of jewelry. There was a book. Like, everything matched up to the Harry Potter Horcruxes that needed to be destroyed before he finally died. It was really weird.
Wow. It's like someone should make a spinoff called the Adolf Potter. Or
right,
Harry Hitler.
Harry Hitler.
I mean, that's
he's on a search for all the Horcruxes.
Oh my god!
J.K. Rowling is probably putting all that stuff in there because of that.
She knew.
Yeah, there's connections.
She knew all that stuff. That's not a coincidence.
Right. There's a reason it's so popular too. It's all designed.
Exactly.
This is another really, I'm finishing up. My friends, I told them I was doing this and they're like, you have to mention, like, there's so much to this. I try to keep it really simple, like the history of magic wars, the history of magic. And whenever you look up this stuff, everyone looks into the fallen angels. But what we realized with the murder of language, what could have been fallen angels, one little syllable, one little phrase will be changed and it changes the entire thing. So I look at our world very much from a simulation theory, just because we are surrounded by numbers in every aspect of our life. So I always just take a look at what numbers are saying. And if you look into the change of angels to angles, this is interesting because the pyramids of like Egypt, they follow the Fibonacci sequence. They fit pi into the pyramids. The pyramids, the way they're positioned on Earth to the sun, everything like is mathematics and pi. And it's like, okay, that's obviously something we have to look into. So if you look into parallel lines and traversals and angles, this is where parallel dimensions and this multiverse theory comes into play, I think. And in the past, you used to hear about people calling, you guys said it earlier, aliens, they're demons. And we're like, no, they're not, they're aliens. But if you think of us as dimensionally traveling, not just like leaving Earth and going to a different planet, if we leave the third 3D realm plane of existence and go to the higher realms of existence and vice versa, then that's where the demon aspect comes in. Even if, and I've heard there be of good demons too, but like, and they're called daemons or something. But basically when basically something traveling dimensions can enter in a body. And what is troubling about this is in real life, Epstein owned a genetics lab. If you are familiar with WikiLeaks, then you are familiar with the Podesta art. And there's a lot of hybrid animals that we believe this genetic company was making. At the time of Atlantis falling, there was a bunch of rumors going on that like the Atlanteans were making hybrid animals and it was coming out really bad. Like it's crimes against humanity because like these animals necessarily couldn't live the best lives and it was sad basically. So but if you made animals or if you have the ability to create vessels and beings, it's going to make things that you can enter a soul into. So that's where things get really dicey with the whole aliens and demons talk, because if we are talking about things traveling interdimensionally and not worldly, then we are looking at the word demons over aliens in some views. And it's also interesting to know, and I was thinking of this yesterday, the movie Signs, it used to scare me so much. But if you look at Signs in a different way and not pay attention to the big, scary alien grays, you see a different story at play. The little girl is scared of water. She keeps saying there's bugs in the water. Like, I'm not touching the water. There's bugs in the water. And then you see the aliens, big scary aliens come and they start realizing like they stay away from water. If water touches them, they melt. They have green skin. And that's a lot of what we hear about these witches. They have green skin. The water melts their skin. And recently, we are noticing a lot of bugs in water. Whenever you have a pandemic, it always goes back to parasites in water. And usually it's a bad, not sewage system, but like a bad sanitary system in the old days. So of course it was understandable, but nowadays, we're still finding these hydra parasites in water, in rainwater around the world. I'm sure people have seen them in the jab they did up close and personal pictures. We're seeing that again.
They found them in the jab.
Yeah, that's what she said.
One crazy looking thing, that looks like the Stranger Things.
We talked about that last time.
Yeah,
it's literally like the Mind Flayer.
Yeah, Yeah.
And you're like, what? I couldn't believe it.
Like they're putting, and then there was like graphene looking stuff.
Yes.
Also, there was another lady that put another, and there was these like metallic looking circles that would like self-assemble. So it was like literally like AI nanotech stuff.
Yeah, nanotech.
Yeah, there's crazy stuff that are in.
Well, and so like real quick, what do you guys think about how that nanotech could be controlled by frequencies like 5G, you're getting a more dense data stream that's to control things that need that heavy data process, but you can't put it very far, and they put it on our phones. And so do you guys think that has anything to do with what they could be doing with nanotech?
Yeah. Do you know what the Havana syndrome is? Havana syndrome is something apparently you only get it in other countries or blah, blah, like Kamala Harris apparently just had it. But when you look up the definition of it, it literally talks about, it basically explains like a voice of God technology, like something like a frequency that somehow controls your body or something. It's crazy. And then they admit that all these other people, these like politicians and these people are getting it. And they're thinking there's theory that it works in tandem with whatever the jab is putting into us, and possibly a 5G tower is creating what they're calling Havana syndrome, like it's a frequency and then whatever nanotech is in your body. And
it definitely appears to all be connected for sure.
Yeah, right. And I did a terrible job of explaining the Havana syndrome. But
no, that was awesome. It sounds like MK Ultra and Manchurian Candidate.
It sounds like something that would happen where somebody would probably have a very rapid onset acute reaction to probably like a skin reaction or something that would cause inflammation, or almost like.
I'm going to look it up. It only happens to certain people. There's a very specific type of person it can happen to. And it's really, really interesting.
That is. I'm going to check it out.
And you can continue. I'll look this up.
Okay. Where my friends where we're getting at with this is, if we're looking at light and mirrors and projections, that's where you go with parallel dimensions. What's the mirror of this dimension? And a lot of people say that anti-gravity or dark matter is matter that we can't see because we're looking at a projection of ourselves. So if you get it's the same thing as if you get mirrors in the bathroom and you close your medicine cabinet mirror closer to like your big mirror, and you see the black void start happening, and you see the repetition of multiple U's in the mirror, and you can play with it. That's basically how the illusions in our society that we see on our screens work. Anyone who's taken a film class, you understand how the light enters into the film and gets transitioned. And there is ever so slightly disformations and things you don't see if you know how to do some cinematography correct. And in the Truman Show, it's hilarious that their stars weren't in space. It was actually just like a power source that was higher up than them. So if you start thinking of like dimensions being like the serious dimension, or think of it that way, then it's like, oh, these Palladians from that dimension, that makes a completely different reality than them being from like aliens that we think of coming in with rockets and stuff.
Extra dimensional.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And they can travel through portals and wormholes and all kinds of stuff, rather, because like a lot of people tend to think only on a 3D level, oh, they're only traveling through space on a ship. Well, so they have ships, right, but they're also traveling interdimensionally, and they're also and they also exist on these higher dimensions, like you said. So it's kind of both.
Yeah, people do. Again, we keep going back to this the more we talk about it, but it's what's kind of been repeated in our history. That's all people know. But yeah, it's a very linear perspective of things, especially like space travel. And again, we can kind of touch on, if anyone out there, if you've read or watched Dune, in that they fold space instead of traveling through a Stargate or by using ion propulsion or going to hyperspace. They fold space around them. So there's.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, exactly. That was it.
And then, and that's what like a wormhole is. It's 2 points in space folded, and then you create a point that connects to, both areas, and you just travel instantaneously. But like Alex Collier and others talk about, there are races that, and you have to be at a certain level of advancement, I'm sure, to do this, but they say, so every point in space has a specific frequency. So if you match a specific frequency, you instantaneously travel to that point in space.
Right.
And that's how Andromedans travel.
That's how time travel works, essentially. Yeah.
Wow.
It's the same way with passing through walls. If you could match the frequency of the wall, you could walk right through it. It doesn't exist. That's how you see a craft flying through a mountain or something like that. That's just
wow,
brain blown.
And how you walk
right?
Well, they say that you can get like from here to the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy in like 20 minutes with this warp capable technology by folding it, like Aaron said. But we're getting way off topic now.
And I bet it really does take 30 seconds to get to Mars.
All right, DoorDashers, slapping.
Right.
But if you're only thinking in terms of what mainstream science, our limited understanding of what we think is possible. You can't travel faster than the speed of light, which is BS. That's just a misunderstanding. That's limited. But that's what a lot of mainstream scientists try to make the argument. Oh, if aliens do exist, we would never encounter them. They would never come here because it would take them so long traveling at the speed of light, or whatever. And that's because they're misunderstanding.
Right. Well, I mean,
how they're actually able to travel, and
we're not getting it from them anyway.
Listen to our fake science to explain extraterrestrials.
Yeah. But that's all controlled, obviously.
How many more slides do you have?
I think we're done. Like, I think
okay.
This was like the done. Okay. So yeah, basically, quick question or a quick insert, because we were talking about Dune. They used spice, which was like worm gas. I don't know how else to describe it. It was a gas from a worm, and it was the blood of a worm in some instances, but the worms did make gas, so you didn't necessarily need to kill the worms. You could have its off gas. But the weird thing about that story is the Delphi Oracle is a known story of these Delphi oracles that would be tied up. There was a phi serpent, a huge worm that would release gas under the oracle. The oracle would breathe in the gas, and then she would tell people how they're going to win the war, or basically. And like, think of 300, that naked girl doing everything. There was gas around her. They don't show the huge serpent under her that they're making her breathe in the gas of, basically. So
interesting.
So was that it?
Yeah, that's basically it. Just saying that there are real stories of the Dune time travel, or the space travel ability using worms, and it's weird in real life. So if we're looking at the simulation theory, which uses, or holographic theory too, which basically uses our entire world as a holographic universe, our smallest protons being just light. Proton is just light vibrating at whatever frequency it is, that makes a hologram. And it's already like known in science that if you touch something, you're never actually touching it. Your body thinks you're touching it. You feel like you're touching it. And it's all a mind trick of, we never actually touch anything around us. There's always going to be like a tiny, tiny hair length of a fraction of a width between us and whatever we're touching. And they say, modern science says it's because like our fingerprints, the way that it touches, all these weird things, but we don't actually touch anything. So this goes into the idea that our universe is kind of working like a illuminated series. So if you drop an angle, or if an angle falls wherever the light comes in, that's going to change the entire projection and the entire reality of whatever the manifestation was supposed to be. So it's interesting that when you look at the Illuminati, and you always see like protractors and this illumination effect, and fallen angels could also work for fallen angles, because literally if you have an angle fall, which if angles are lights in the sky that we see, like Pleiades. If you have people fall from the Pleiades, then it's going to change the reflection of what we're viewing. So you have to kind of look at everything, like think of a mirror kind of. And this is ways that if you're a master builder and if you change just the angles that we're seeing things, it would literally make an illusion. And light reflects off all objects that we see. So literally how the eye works is through like what we perceive with our mind all has to do with these angles of light. So I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. Just more explanations.
Right. It's just all about optics, and that's what even 9/11 or Project Bluebeam and all that stuff, a lot of it's just rumors. There's really, there's not a whole lot of actual factual evidence about Project Bluebeam, but we have to go by whistleblower accounts and stuff like that. But that would be the ultimate trick to the eye. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. And we know that the CIA has been put onto Hollywood films. They put it in their credits. The idea that Hollywood is forcing the idea that Hollywood is forcing a narrative or an illusion does tie into our CIA, at least just money ties. And I don't think we have time to go over this.
That's okay.
Well, what we do, I just we can go as long as we want. There's no.
You guys do,
It's interesting about the college, though. If you look at all the universities and just the architecture alone, and just what was taking place back then, it's like there's more. It's all symbolism. It's all cult anyway. Why put that on our universities unless there's some other reason, right?
Why are basically every major city, the layout of the cities are all occult geometry, especially like DC, and there's obelisks with domes everywhere. That's all occult symbolism.
Yeah.
When you know this stuff, when you understand this stuff, and then you look around, it's everywhere.
Literally
and
everywhere.
All
right.
stuff built,
And it can't be unseen. It really can't. Once you see the difference as it existed, it's hard to see it another way. Where we're kind of diving in with this, I know that there was a lot to unpack there with kind of the look back into antiquity of witchcraft and everything. But in our more recent era, the last century, there has been the rise in what we would call contemporary education, right? Especially with women. There's a lot of, I didn't know about these. I think we kind of fell into this. I even think we were digging on this last year. When we were looking at iPod did a fantastic series about the Weathermen Underground. If anyone has not checked that out, quick little pump, go check out this series. How these activists basically started what I think was a lot of the high profile crimes that these people who wanted to corrupt our country were behind. And a lot of our systems, especially universities, we all know that the elite send their children to these schools. They want to keep this knowledge that they've accumulated over all of these years. They want to keep it within the family. We hear that phrase a lot. Keep it within the family. They want to keep the knowledge within these families. So they're always being sent to these Ivy League schools. And some of these schools dabble in things like witchcraft. They're passing on these hidden knowledges. And they have, not only through the faculty or through the alumni, but even just like what you said, Aaron and Tyler, about the architecture of these schools, where they're still mimicking these old ways. There's always this kind of it's the smoke left behind that they're still following these ways, and there might be something to it. Why else would you not continue to pass on these traditions if there wasn't any purpose to them? If exactly. It was, they do it for a reason, and we're not really sure why. So Lexi's got right here, she's got some examples. I believe this was pulled from one of the, what was it? Just an article kind of.
It's like an elite magazine. And they're just like gossiping how fun it was to go to these witchcraft schools. But the names that came out of the schools was interesting. Hillary, Jane, Betty, Nora, Gloria Vanderbilt. These are people who shaped our society in ways that we might not have liked. And they officially say they have covens in their school. Does that mean all the covens are bad?
No,
I don't know. I don't think so.
Not. Yeah.
But those covens, if they are ill-willed, if they're funded by the proper parents, then it can turn into activism groups that span from the 60s till now and cause really big problems.
I mean, in the Weathermen Underground, I mean, they were tied with, we'll stop the presentation there. Good job, Alexia, by the way. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that was
amazing.
That was, looked like you guys put tons of time into that, or Alexia, whoever did it.
To be fair, it all goes to this wonderful woman right here. She spent all the time putting that together. I've actually got a few things we can bring up.
Well, what's interesting is that, people went into this just by the title thinking history of the witch, but it goes back to, you can't just stop there because it's just embedded everywhere. And it really is the history of magic is really what it should have been titled, because that is, I mean, but it's all hand in hand. It's just really interesting. You can't stay on that topic and break it down. You have to stray away.
Correct. Yeah. You can't really get any further from it.
Right.
I'm going to share my screen one more time for you folks and just go through a little bit while I talk. I specifically want to cover Bryn Mawr, which is one of the 7 different colleges that they have. Give me just 1 second here, folks. There it is. Thank you. So just for example, these are just some quick things I'm going to run through. Their mascot is known as Predator D. He is an owl, which we all know how the owl ties into the occultism and some of these secret societies that we've seen. Just something I wanted to touch on real quick. So Bryn Mawr College it's kind of got a weird founding in it, where what I mean by weird is you look at Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania, which again has kind of its own weird history. It had one witch trial that was actually adjudicated by William Penn himself, which Pennsylvania is named after. He was actually the judge in that case, where the woman actually was found guilty of being a witch and practicing witchcraft, but she didn't actually commit any crime. And I found that was really really interesting. If they weren't dismissing her as someone who was pretending to be a witch or, being a practicer of Satanism or something other like that, but she didn't dispute it. She was a witch, but she just hadn't done anything wrong. Mm-hmm. And we see this college come out of a very large donation by a man who wanted women specifically to have a chance at a higher education. And there was on some piece of land that a farmer had owned back in the early 1800s. And at the end of the 19th century, we see the Bryn Mawr College get founded, and many, many women have gone there. A lot of important one too. Like we were talking about the alumni. This is just a quick news clipping article I found from October 31st, 1991, where someone had actually written trying to give some more insight to Bryn Mawr, because there was a lot of talk back then about, have you guys heard about witches? They have to spin this story. And again, this is like decades old, fake news, really. I mean, this is them kind of putting it out there. Hey, all witches aren't so bad. And there's another side of what they're talking about. But again, it shows that even back then, they were still trying to detract people from the truth about what may have really been going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I bring this up because I wanted to show, when I was doing research in this, I was like, okay, who are the people who matter most are the people who are actually teaching at this school, the staff and the faculty. So I did a little bit of looking, and I found out that there was a gentleman named John Caputo. And John D. Caputo had written a lot of different philosophical viewpoints about the weakness of God. And that really piqued my interest because, there's a helicopter. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
No.
Okay, good. It's really loud. Just for the audience, this man, John Caputo, this is what he had written, and he was teaching this at Bryn Mawr. And he's teaching this to women for whatever purpose, but to bring this type of education, I don't think it really benefits anybody. I don't know how this could be used towards good. I don't know why
they're
they would
just
be teaching
telling
this,
you where to pull your magic. If there are covens at the school, then it's important to be like, why are we censoring which form you pull your magic from? If we're allowed to have covens that go over these gods, why are you telling us that this other god to pull from is like lesser than, unless you're trying to push something? So it's just interesting.
Mm-hmm.
just a little more about John Caputo there. So these are some, if you guys do look into Bryn Mawr and you look into the alumni, this is just some quick snapshots of it. But one, looking into the school, something else that caught my eye was Kathy Bodine, who, if anyone knows about the Weathermen Underground, she was part of that whole group that was founded by Bill Ayers. And she was involved with a murder, a Brinks robbery gone wrong that was part of a bigger Weatherman Underground false flag, call it what you will, FF. And she attended this school. And also you have, Lisa Oz, who's, I believe she's the wife of Dr. Oz, or the sister.
Big names definitely go here. I know the Marvelous Miss Maisel. That's all about Bryn Mawr graduates. Her and her mother, who are from an oil refinery company. Basically, it's the women that went to Bryn Mawr.
Right. They go there to, you want a prestigious education. You want to be given the best of the best knowledge. And is that really the best of the best knowledge? What really does this school have in store for the people going there?
Indoctrination.
Correct. Yeah,
right.
It's selection, right? Those who are there who may be seeking a different sort of occult knowledge, or who maybe have a lot of power, they get drawn to these things where they wouldn't have otherwise before. And that's why I was pointing out John Caputo's work, his perception and philosophy about God. That's going to skew somebody who may not have an internal relationship with the Lord. That's really going to drive them away from having a meaningful relationship. And that's what I think would give them more power to do things that would involve witchcraft or ritualism or sacrifice. That goes against what their natural abilities are. Everything that Lexi had just talked about in that presentation, where these things exist and they know the truth of it, and they're suppressing it from us, because if we knew, then we'd be just as powerful as they are, and they can't have that. They can't have it right now.
Well, we're way more powerful than they are, is the truth, because we are really get down the rabbit hole. The Cabal they're a satanic or a Luciferian cult that and then it goes to the Draco above them, who basically they're disconnected from source. So they're parasites, and you're going to talk about parasites. Like, they have to feed off of this loosh energy, like we talk about, this negative energy. And that's why they have to do all these rituals, manipulate us to stay in fear and suffering and everything else, create these wars. And they're feeding off of us. And that's how they're doing black magic, essentially. And we're powerful beings connected to source that have that power within us if we know how to access it and use it, and not be manipulated by fear and lack and think we're just these lowly humans and that aren't powerful.
Well, that's just it. We don't know how to use it. Even though we're awake and we talk about this stuff, we still don't know. And part of us might even be shut off because of our environment. And there might be things in place that just don't even allow us to achieve that. So technically we're more powerful, but it doesn't matter until we can get to a place to actually utilize that.
Well, the biggest thing though is because the whole system, mainstream everything, the whole system, everything is set up to keep us enslaved. And that's what school, it indoctrinates us. It programs us to be a good slave in the system. 9-to-5 jobs, the media, everything, getting us addicted to sports and entertainment and all this stuff. And it's all siphoning our energy and keeping us enslaved, keeping us mentally enslaved, emotionally, spiritually. So it's basically, the answer is to go within. It's as simple as that. It's to tap into your heart, tap into yourself, go within, and start living from that space rather than being addicted and attached to the outwardly stuff that they want you attached to and enslaved by. Yep. And we can get in, you can break that down a ton, but that's essentially what it's all about. And once you're living from your true self, from your heart, they can't control that, and that's where your power is. So that's the thing they're most afraid of, is us waking up just to that too. Because once you're there, you're going to start living from that space. You're not going to buy into all the systems.
Well,
you're not going to be addicted to all these things.
Actually,
you're going to think for yourself, question.
What I actually meant was like, we can't use the force yet. Like we can't fly and levitate and like, well, we can. But
with that attitude, you're not going to be flying.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying like, let's be real. Like, when are we going to start seeing people levitating and moving objects and stuff like that? That's our true potential. Not, I know going within. I mean, like actually like using this stuff, like we see in the movies.
Yeah. Well, those are abilities that, that takes, discipline to.
It takes belief.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
right.
every single witch movie and programming movie, it's belief. They did it because they believed they could. And that's the whole thing of the Matrix is they thought Neo died. He had his death and resurrection, but he believed that he could resurrect in the Matrix, and it was unexplainable. And he resurrected in the Matrix because he believed he could.
Absolutely.
So lucid dreaming almost.
Yeah. And it's setting intention and following through with intention. But what I was talking to Tyler about before this, I've done a whole dig into Rh negative blood types. My best friend she's a nurse, and she's been following this awakening for the past 4 years. And everyone talks about either Rh negative recessive trait or being of O blood, A negative blood, B negative blood, because these blood types do not allow antigens to form to our DNA. So the thing with antigens, what is an antigen? It's a protein left over from a parasitic infection. It's part of our godly immune system. It's actually, weirdly enough, what keeps us alive from getting really bad parasites, viruses, and every virus is a parasite. So when our fever goes like above 106 or 105 area, if we get a sickness, we'll have an antigen from that parasite, a parasitic protein, and it'll cover part of our DNA. And when you have an antigen on a DNA strand, that DNA strand now has junk DNA. If you look up antigens cause junk DNA, it does. So this is where you're looking into people and you're like, now you, instead of having what you maybe normally naturally had of A negative blood, if you got sick, now you have A positive blood because now you're positive of an antigen. And Rh negative, some people are even positive blood types and they still carry the Rh negative recessive trait, which means they at least don't have the remus, which is the monkey gene. Rhesus, thank you. That monkey gene, you at least don't have that antigen on your DNA. So what we're thinking and what I've noticed with our biohacking is the different oxidizers we take, the different carbon products we take, remove these spike proteins. There's already one that confirms chlorine dioxide for the current pandemic, and it's removing the spike protein. So if you could do that from your past, the antigens that our grandparents left on our DNA, if that's able to be chiseled off with an oxidizer, which is an antiparasitic, then it's like, oh, we can access our memories. Our DNA holds memories. Again, it's a scientific fact.
Yeah.
So if we can unlock this locked DNA, you're going to at least remember your bloodline. And people say this, you'll at least remember the past 14 generations. 12 to 14 seems to be what everyone says. If you can unlock that, which is where we're going to learn our powers, which is where we're going to remember how to lay runes before you do a presentation. So if you go back to my first presentation, you're going to see runes and you're going to see elements being signifying of water and earth and air. And then that is a protection spell for whatever comes. Because if you remember in your bloodline, someone before you probably has learned all these interesting things. We just need to access those. So biohacking on Rikileaks.
Exactly. There's a reason they shut off 95% of our DNA and then they call it junk DNA. So we just think, oh, it's just junk. Yeah, no.
Well, and that
nature doesn't make junk nature literally, like, look through nature. It doesn't waste anything. It doesn't just put things there for no reason. Does that make any sense? No. Well, so there's obviously a reason that's there, and they didn't want you to not look at it. Oh, it's just junk DNA. Don't look at it.
Yeah.
95%. Yeah.
Yeah. They think we're all so stupid.
Exactly.
Right. Well, then it also correlates back to what I was talking about, which you guys who listened to the show, you've heard me talk about the rebel gene and the Enlil and Enki, the Sumerian story about how they were creating mankind. And they were dueling brothers. One wanted like the best for humans, the other one wanted to enslave us. So I think it was Enlil. I always forget which one the good one was. I get confused.
Enki was a good one.
They say it. Well,
Enki, yeah. So
I think that's right.
But anyway, apparently he left a gene active in our DNA, which is what is now activating within all of us who are going through the awakening. It's something that we have in our DNA that literally another half of humanity apparently doesn't have, because Enlil removed that rebel gene, they call it, right? This rebel, because like it's a rebellion gene.
It's a rebellion.
They removed that gene from the slave race. So we look around like, why don't these people get it?
Mentality,
like why is this person playing a flute wearing a mask with a hole cut out in it? Like, what is going on there?
They're like robotic zombies.
And it might be because their DNA is literally different than ours. And there's something missing. A big
part of it, at least.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. This is one of the longer ones. We've been going for about 2 hours now. So thank you so much for sharing all that. Please let everybody know once again where they can find you and your information.
Yeah, so guys, you can find both me and Alexia on Telegram. You can find us at the Rikileaks official channel that'll be posted down below. Alexia also has her biohacking channel that's directly affiliated with
that's on Rumble. So just Rumble Rikileaks, and you'll see all of our biohacking videos.
Yes, we do have a Rumble channel, and that's where all of our content is primarily posted. We have a YouTube channel coming in the future, and we are also going to branch off with other platforms.
Great. RIKKI leaks, right? Rikileaks.
Correct. Yes. Correct.
1K.
1K.
Oh,
1K. Singular K.
Okay. 1K. Sorry. Rikileaks. Anyway, yeah, guys, it's a great Telegram channel to follow. I mean, they're pumping out information all the time, and I'm always perusing there, just seeing what's current. So definitely go check it out. Give them a follow. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you for the donations. We love you all. And we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Until next time, have a great Halloween.